Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Zach Young, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're joined by Sonja Keeve, a master podcast coach, speaker, and CEO of Sisters with a Voice podcast network, where she helps women entrepreneurs move from simply thinking about a podcast to building, launching, and monetizing a show in as little as 30 days. Sonja draws on her own journey of turning a passion project into a global platform to teach clients how to clarify their message, amplify their voice, and use podcasting as a vehicle to attract clients, create impact, and generate new income streams. Sonja, a very, very warm welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. I'm honored to be here today.
Absolutely. It's going to be a wonderful episode. We have a lot to dive into. Before we do, I do like to start with your background, though. So before podcasting, before Sisters with a Voice, can you tell us what were you doing previously? And what was really your inspiration for getting into this space?
Well, I won't take you back to when I was 3 years old. But before I got into podcasting, I'd done a couple of other things. I did a lot of multi-level network marketing, like Avon, Herbalife, Mary Kay, just to name a few. And then I got the wonderful idea to start a t-shirt apparel line. At the time, I was on social media and I was known for creating content with inspirational messages. And at the end of each message, I would always say hashtag walk in love. And that phrase was a scriptural phrase from the Bible out of Ephesians 5:2. And I did this line, reached out to a coworker, said, "Hey, could you put this phrase, hashtag walk in love, on a t-shirt with this scripture reference?" And he was like, "Sure." And so I thought that was kind of going to be my first introduction to entrepreneurship, kind of creating something from the ground up. It didn't last very long, but it was impactful for me because I created that line after I had been laid off from corporate America the first time. And so I was looking for something to create that would be mine. I used the t-shirts kind of as a segue to really kind of share my story of resilience and overcoming, once you've been laid off from a corporate job. It ventured into someone reaching out to me for a book project. They were doing an anthology called Women Inspiring Nations. And she reached out to me because she'd seen some of my work on social media, thought I would be a great fit for her book project. And I got to tell my story in a chapter of that anthology where I was one of 25 women who told their stories. And that opened the doors for me being a first time published author. So I was like, man, this is great. I got the t-shirt line, I got the book, and thinking, okay, we're going to be a New York best time seller. I had these big dreams for everything I touched. And shortly after the book tour, which was great for me, I uh, was back in corporate America doing other work, only to get laid off a second time.
Mm.
And this was probably 2015 when it happened. And that second layoff really broke me. The first one was in 2008 when the economy had collapsed. 2015 was pivotal for me because I was kind of leaning into, this is the career I want. I'm going to retire from here. This is going to be the end of my story. And when I got laid off after only being with the company for about 5 years, I was really lost and looking for a way to figure out kind of what would be my next. And scrolling Facebook, a young lady was hosting a social media challenge for aspiring entrepreneurs like myself. And we had to come up with a product or service, but we had to be ready to implement it right away. And someone had talked to me about podcasting. I knew what it was, but I just didn't know how I can incorporate this and, make it a business. And I saw podcasting as a way to like interview people. So I said, oh, you know what? I can be like the next Oprah Winfrey. And interview people, but I was like, well, where are they going to come from? And so I put a post out there on social media and said, hey, if I start a podcast, would you be my guest? Not knowing what the response would be, but to my surprise, 50 women said yes before they even knew what the concept of the show was going to be. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
God, I got to figure out and get this together. And so, like probably many of you all out there, you probably went on YouTube or something and said, how to start a podcast. And the funny thing was, watching those videos, if you've ever watched a YouTube video, the creator will say, push this, download this software. And what they were doing on the video, was not happening in my reality, and I was getting frustrated. But guess what? You can't call the person because you're watching a video. So it's like, okay, I've got 50 women who want to be on this podcast that has not yet been created. So I did what I always do when my back's against the wall. I figured it out, put the podcast show together, and on March 10th of 2018, I launched my podcast show, Inspiring Nations with Sonja Keeve, and we started out with those 50 women March 10th on 2018.
2018. I mean, if I would have gone back to my 2018 self, I may not have known what a podcast was. So I just have to say,
Yeah,
you started a podcast pre-COVID. You were an OG in
yeah.
the space. You were an OG podcaster.
I never thought about that, but yep, I guess I am.
I love it. I love it. So, podcast was started back in
Yes,
2018. When did
yes.
Sisters with a Voice, when did the business come to be?
So ironically, the show was doing really, really well. We were heard, in several countries. Oh, this is something amazing. But what was more amazing to me was that the women who were on the show, and I had a few gentlemen that did come on the show over the years. But at the end of every story, I always like to ask my guests, like, how did I make you feel? And they were just in such awe, like, making me feel like a movie star, like, thank you for offering your platform and having us on your show. And I'm thinking, I just created what I think is a little podcast show. You're welcome. But I thought even deeper, like, listen, I figured out how to put together an international show. I need to teach other people how to do the same. And so when COVID happened in 2019, guess what happened? The world shut down. So of course I'm working in corporate America again. And actually on my vacation, when the world shut down for COVID, my boss called me and said, hey, we're going to be working from home, for the time being. So I said, okay, well, great. So now I'm at home working in my corporate job. And guess what? I now have all of this free extra time to really start diving in what's next for the business. And for me, the next logical step was, I learned how to put a podcast show together. Why not teach it? And teach others how to do the same. So
Hmm.
2020 of March, I launched Sisters with a Voice podcast network, and it was designed primarily for women of color to create their own platforms and their own tables by producing their own profitable podcast show. And the funny thing was, even though it was for women, I had a few gentlemen were like, "Hey, what about us? Because I would love to start, start a podcast." And I was
Yeah.
like the name of the company. Okay, fine. And so we created courses and one-on-one coaching to help people to kind of put a podcast together, because right at 2020 there was like this boom. Everybody was home and people wanted to start a podcast. And while unfortunately a lot of businesses either went under or stopped operating, like a lot of the brick and mortars because of COVID, my business was still thriving because I had started the business in a virtual space to begin with. So
Mhm.
it made sense for people that were looking, like the YouTube videos weren't getting it done for them. And so they were searching on Google, like, podcast teachers, start a podcast, and my name started popping up in a lot of the SEO searches, and so people started to reach out to me, and they
Yeah.
found, being a part of the course and learning how to do a podcast, they found out it wasn't as complicated as they initially thought it could be. But for me, it was deeper than just showing people how to do a podcast. It was really getting to the root of why do you want to do this space? Because for me, when I started podcasting, anything that I do in business, I always want to make sure it's something that can outlive me And I didn't want to jump into just the latest trend here today, gone tomorrow. And when I did my own research, realizing that podcasting actually has gone back all the way to like 2002, 2004.
Mm,
Um, I saw the evolution of what this could be. And for women, like men, like Zach, you guys, you all figured it out. Like this was a medium that was going to be revolutionary for businesses. But for women, we get into the space a lot of times where we overthink and overanalyze everything. And so a
mm,
lot of people were hesitant to start a podcast, especially women, because they thought, I'm not techie. It's probably gonna be super complicated. I don't know if I'll have enough content. And so I started to kind of all of the objections that people were giving, it helped me kind of create the curriculum to show you that you don't have to be tech savvy. You don't you already have content because your life is content. You just
mm.
need the tools and the platform of someone to teach you how to do it and do it right. Because for me, I can tell you when I started my podcast show, I tell people it took 8 hours to edit my very first episode because I was trying to figure out how to put all the things together. And so just like with anything in life, if you do it consistently and over time, you just continue to get better. And so the
Yeah.
company evolved, my audience evolved, and I realized that I had something pretty powerful here at the network that no one else was doing. And so it was kind of like the universe aligned, and I was in the right place at the right time. And so that's how
Mhm.
the company evolved and came to be.
So you were still in corporate when the
Yep.
company came to be. Are you still in
Yes,
corporate or are you full time in the business?
I am full time in the business.
Nice. Okay, so that was three times in
Yes.
corporate, and you're like, I'm done. Three strikes and I'm out. I'm not going back.
Yes. Yes. Well, and the funny thing was, I tried to go back and couldn't. Like, it was like, what is happening? And so I said, well, you know what? Let me just, maybe this is my time to kind of just dig down and,
Mm,
really see what this could be.
yeah.
And now personally, I work at a university, teaching. And ironically, I teach a personal branding course. So I get to talk about my love for podcasting and how
Mhm.
personal branding mirrors that as well.
Very nice. So you're working with business owners, entrepreneurs. Do you find that you're working with a certain set of niche a decent amount of time? You maybe like coaches or, service-based business owners, or are you working with, a very wide variety of clients?
Right now it has been very niche specific. A lot of coaches,
Mm,
a lot of entrepreneurs. But now I continue to have the conversation to reach out to like real estate agents and people who have service-based businesses to utilize a podcast to showcase their expertise. And
mhm.
so it's interesting because I'm seeing all the facets and industries where podcasts can be utilized, but people still haven't quite figured out how to tap into it. And so I continue to show up in spaces where people say, you know what? Oh my God. When I introduce myself, they're like, I've been wanting to start a podcast for the last 5 years. And I'm like, well, let's get started. And so
Yeah.
so that's kind of how things have gone for me so far.
Yeah, I feel like in the business realm, especially podcasts, very still untapped, right?
Yes.
Maybe in the more, I don't know what to say, individual Joe
Yes.
Rogan-esque type
Yes.
podcast realm, yes,
Yes.
oversaturated. Versus, hey, a
Hmm.
business owner, a real estate
Yes.
agent, like you talked about, seems very untapped. So a
Yes.
lot to do
Hmm.
there. I
Yes.
want to ask, I mean, I talked about it in my intro. Obviously, these business owners aren't just doing it for fun,
Right.
right?
Right.
At the end of the day, it is a business. It is marketing, of course, but also
Right.
they can generate income
Yes.
from the podcast. Walk us through that process. I'm sure it looks different for different companies, but walk us through turning a podcast into a revenue stream.
Well, most people, when they think of podcasting, they immediately go to sponsorships. And I tell people while sponsorships is a way, it's probably the hardest way because, especially if you don't have an audience. So I speak to people from starting from what do you currently have in your hands? So, have you written a book? Do you currently do classes? coaching? What is it that you already offer in your business that you probably have not utilized your podcast to tell people about? Because most people, once they tune into a podcast, it's like, well, where do you want to take your audience? Next, like after they finish listening to the show, do you lead them to an offer? Do you lead them to your website? And so your podcast becomes your free marketing tool to
Mm.
advertise the products and services that you have. So that becomes instant revenue for you because you don't have to create something, it's already been created for you. So a lot of times, especially on my show, I will tell people, for more information on how to work with me, go visit my website. And what happens when they go to your website? You've got your books out there, maybe your t-shirts, your services, well, all the things that you do in your business should be right there on your website. And guess what? They get to click and then learn more, and right there you created an instant revenue stream for you. Other
Mm.
ways to make money are through affiliate marketing. I've done a lot of affiliate marketing partnerships with other podcasters. So they have, because guess what? You get to utilize their network as well as they get to utilize yours. So now you've got a whole stream of new potential clients that could be interested in the products and services that you have.
Yeah.
And then, though it's taboo, you could charge people to be a guest on your show, but there has to be a value add for that audience, for that guest to come onto the show, and why should they pay? And so there, I've had clients who've, before they even launched a podcast, really amassed a huge network, and they, buy their services and things that they do. Like every time they come up with a new product, their clients are buying it, and so. I had a client who, when she went through my program, she charged her guests to come onto the show and they paid. So that becomes another revenue stream. But it's always that gray area. Do I charge? Do I not charge? And so I always say, if you are going to charge, there definitely needs to be a value add. What's in it for them? And for a lot of new business owners, the biggest thing that they need is visibility. And so if
Mm.
they can get the visibility, and you have hundreds and thousands of followers, it's, and then they get to kind of talk about not only themselves but about their services. Guess what? They've now introduced themselves to a whole new network without even probably leaving their own homes.
Yeah. I think visibility is probably the biggest thing that you
Yeah.
mentioned, which
hmm
leads me very well into my next question is how do you go about growing the podcast? How do you market the podcast?
So, like, when most people, when they start out as a solo style podcaster, unless you have a team, you are the chief everything officer. So you are the marketer, you are the promoter, you are the HR person, you are all the things. And so just like you first, probably that same energy you used when you first launched your podcast show, you have to promote your show on all your social media handles, everywhere you go. When you're out networking in person with folks and people ask, what do? You tell them about your show. I literally have had people, when I tell them, I'm a podcaster and I have my own show, they go, oh, where can I listen to it? And I go, oh, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then the next thing it says, well, what's the name of it? And right then and there, while they're standing next to me, they'll look for it and pull it up. So definitely make sure you're on all the podcast platforms, because people right then and there will download your show and they're like, oh, Inspiring Nations. And, they're like, well, I'm going to check it out. And so I'm always telling people about my show. When I have guests on the show, I also ask them, would you please share your episode and tell people about the show? And a really easy way of promoting the show is, at the end of every show, I always ask my audience, if you really like this episode, do me a favor, subscribe, like, and leave a 5-star review. And say that exactly. Say what you want. I want you to give me a 5-star review. So like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. Very three simple instructions. And so that
Yeah.
continues to help to get the promotion out there. But it really is, it starts with you sharing and telling everyone about your podcast. Every time an episode releases, I'm dropping the episode, tagging my guests, and asking them to share, as well as I'm doing the same.
And I have to assume launching that across all your social medias, right? I assume you're on
Yes.
Facebook, Instagram, every single one
Yes.
you can think of.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. So business has been around a couple of years now. You just mentioned,
Yes.
some people, they're the CEO, right? They're the chief
Right.
everything officer. Are
Yes.
you currently the chief everything officer, or do you have a team
Yes.
supporting you?
I am still the chief everything officer, and that's by design. Because my business, as with any business, it goes through ebbs and flows, right? And so there's been shifts and changes for like how I want the business to grow, what was working, what was not. Um, in the beginning, literally just trying to figure it out, and full disclosure, when I got my first customer, they're like, "Oh wow, they actually paid for this service." You're like, "Oh, this actually worked, right?" And so you're like, "Well, you know what? That worked. Let me keep going." But then as you continue to understand your brand, because like when it's funny when I did my website the very first time, I was that person that got the website, the colors, the business cards, all the things before I really figured out what is it I was going to do. And even though I was entering into the podcasting space, I had several people come to me say, "Hey, while your website is gorgeous, I don't know what you're known for," because I had the t-shirt line up there, right? I had the books, I had the motivational speaking, and then I had the podcast show. So it wasn't screaming podcaster. And I was like, "Oh." And I never thought about that because, again, I'm just trying to figure it all out. Then I got with a coach who kind of helped me, frame my brand, what I want to be known for, help me with the language so that when I go out, you know, the message was consistent. And so now when people go to the website, they're like, "Oh, okay, I get it." And it happens. And I tell people it's okay. Like if where your business started out, it should evolve over time. And so the vision changed, the mantra changed for the company, and so I continue to operate the business as a solo entrepreneur. And eventually, I've been involved in so many new projects coming up, that eventually I am going to have to, start hiring folks. But it's always that rub. At what point, is your revenue coming in consistently enough where you can actually hire someone?
Mm, that's a very big point. The entrepreneurial journey, it is certainly non-linear, right? It's
Yes.
up, down. One day you feel on top of the
Yes.
world. The next day you're
Yes.
thinking, oh God, I got to go back to corporate. So
Yes.
it's part of the journey. It's
Yes.
part of the journey. Absolutely.
Yes.
But hey, we signed up for it. We sure
Yes.
did. Love it. So yeah, 2026 is just about a couple hours away. Any
Yes.
specific goals you've set for yourself in the business you're looking to achieve next year?
Well, honestly, yes, there are two new projects that I'm launching. One is a radio show. It's called Her Voice Matters, and it will be premiering on January the 28th on 96.8 radio. And I'm really excited about that project. And we've already started interviewing folks for that. And at the same time, I'm launching a television program on a streaming network, DX Virtual TV, called Lead Her Shift, which is a pun on the word leadership. And
Mhm.
so that's going to be premiering February 2026 on DX Virtual TV. And so that evolution of the business has grown because now what's funny is even though I have always been in the audio space as a podcaster, television is new for me. And so now I have partnered with DX Virtual TV as a partner, and so now folks who have never had a podcast, they get to come through my company to learn how to do it and then get their shows ready for television. So it just segues and sets up the business so well, because he needed content creators for the TV network. And so there are a lot of people who've done like Facebook Lives and Instagrams, and they're like, "That's a podcast." And I'm like, "No, that's not a podcast." And so they come through the course to learn exactly what is and what is not a podcast, and then to be able to do it right and show up professionally so that their brand speaks for them.
Very cool. Big things coming in
Yes.
2026. That's
Yes.
for sure. So,
Yes.
we talked about social media a little bit.
Yes.
Where can the listeners find you? What are the handles on social media to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm very easy. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram at Sonja Keeve. That's SonjaKeeve, V as in Victor E. Or you could visit my website at www.sonjakeeve.com.
Making it easy on us. Sonja Keeve everywhere. Some
Yes.
people, Sonja, you know this, they have different handles for every
Yes.
single different social media. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what are you doing?
Right.
You got to hire the branding coach that Sonja worked with because it's way too difficult. Way
Yes.
too difficult. But Sonja,
Yes.
such a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Zach.
Absolutely. And that will wrap up another inspiring episode of the Founders Feature. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and connect with Sonja on all of her social media. Check out her podcast as well, of course, and check out the course. If you're interested in a podcast, she is clearly the woman to go to.